Mindsetters, it is a Monday afternoon and you're hanging out with Looney and Natasha. Natasha, how are you doing?
I'm very well, thanks, Looney. Thank you for asking, and it's great to be with the grade 10s today.
Good. So grade 10s, today, what are we doing, Natasha?
Today we're going to look at interest, finance. We're looking at simple interest, compound interest, hire purchase agreements, and all those exciting things that you guys have learned in your finance section. We will be looking at it for today's lesson and for next week's lesson.
Okay, cool. So I'll send you quickly to your board.
Great, thanks.
Grade 10s, you heard it. We are doing finance today with Natasha. To hook up with us and to just chat, ask me any questions, ask Natasha any questions, you can do that by following us on Twitter at LearnExtra, and our Facebook page is facebook.com/LearnExtra. You can download the show notes, the videos, the schedules, check what we have up online for the next coming weeks and all that on learnextra.co.za/live. Don't forget to ask all those questions, guys. I am here to do just that. So without wasting any more time, I'll send it straight back to Natasha.
All right, guys, so as I said, today we're going to be looking at simple and compound interest, and we're also going to look at hire purchase agreements, which falls under the simple interest section. We are dividing finance into 2 weeks worth of lessons, so we'll look at some finance this week, and then again in next week's lesson we'll do more finance with you. All right, so let's get straight into it. Some important terminology that you guys have learned and should already know. Remember that if we're talking interest, right, we're talking about something that depends on 3 key factors. So interest depends on 3 factors. And let's have a look at those factors. One of those factors is the amount of money invested or borrowed. Okay, we sometimes call that amount, which we denote with a P, we call that the initial amount or the original amount. So P, interest depends on the amount of money that you invest or you borrow. All right? The other thing that interest depends on is the duration, the time length of the investment. So the period of the investment or the loan, and we denote that with the letter N. And then lastly, your interest depends obviously on your interest rate per period. Okay, guys, so remember, when we say interest rate per period, the amount you'll be using is I, okay, which is your interest rate, your rate, divided by 100. So whenever you're looking at the interest rate that you'll be using in calculations, you're going to be using the decimal form. So you'll take whatever your rate was divided by 100 and use that decimal point in your calculator. Okay, so interest depends on 3 factors, P, N, and I. So we're talking about the initial amount, the duration, and then the interest rate per period. And the best way to put all of these things into practice is to do an example. Okay, so we're going to look at lots of examples as we go on through the show, but we're first going to look at simple interest. Okay. Now, simple interest, as the name implies, is very simple. Okay, all that happens is the interest that you get is based on the original sum of money only. Okay, so with simple interest, the interest that you're calculating is based on the original sum either borrowed or invested. Okay, so the formula we use for simple interest is A is equal to P times 1 plus I times N. Okay, obviously I being your interest rate, N being your period, and P being your original amount. A will then give us the final amount after we do the simple interest calculation. Okay, so for simple interest, you're basically looking at your original amount and then we're adding interest onto that, and then you get some final amount at the end. Okay, but your interest is always calculated on the original amount, which is different, as we'll show you later, from compound interest. Okay, so the formula we're going to use in this next example is A is equal to P times 1 plus I times N. Okay, what I want to just make a note of here before we carry on is that whenever you're putting your N in, guys, when we're dealing with the simple interest, always keep it in years. Okay, so always convert. So if they tell you, so we're going to use years. So if they tell you 6 months, you're going to then put in for N. 6 months is going to be 6 divided by 12. because there's 12 months in a year. So 6 divided by 12 is 0.5. So you won't put in 6 months in place of n, you'll put in 0.5 years. So that's important. Whenever you use the simple interest formula, please use years in place of n. Okay, so the first example, right, they say that 20,000 Rand. Okay, so what I like to do is just mark off the letters as we go down. So 20,000 Rand is invested for 10 years. 20,000 Rand, our first letter will be P. That's our original amount. 20,000 Rand is invested for 10 years. So N is 10 years. At an interest rate of 15% per annum. So therefore I will be 0.15. How did I get that? I took the interest rate of 15%, divided it by 100, and this gives me I. 15 divided by 100 is 0.15. Okay, so I just like to do that. I mark down the letters that I've got from the formula as I read the question. So P is 20,000, N is 10 years, and I is 0.15, and it's invested at simple interest. The first part, they say find the accumulated or A, all right, that's what they're looking for, the accumulated amount of the investment. Okay, so this is part A. All right, so we're going to use the formula. Obviously, this is a simple interest question. They tell you that interest is worked out via simple interest. Okay, so we've got our formula. We know that P, we started with an original amount of 20,000, all right, times 1 plus I. We've already seen that our interest rate is 0.15, so we put that in. And then N, the number of years, was 10. It's already in years, so we don't have to do anything to it. Okay, and then we're simply going to work all of this out on our calculator. Okay, I'm going to simplify it a little bit more before we get there. So we've got 20,000 into 1 plus, and if we times this by 10, we're going to move that decimal 1 point. So this is going to be 1,15. If you don't like that, you know, you really don't have to show any working here. You can plug this entire expression into your calculator. Okay, so let's have a look. All right. So we've got 20,000 in brackets times 1 plus 0.15 times 10 if you prefer is equal to 50,000 Rand. So 20,000 at the end of 10 years and using simple interest rate of 15% is going to give us 50,000 Rand. Okay, so straightforward. Okay, so we've got our final amount at the end of the 10-year period is 50,000 Rand. We've just used a straightforward application of the formula, and that's it. Just plug in the values that you've got, and you get your final amount. Okay. Part B says, find the simple interest, okay, at the end of the 10th year. So now what are they asking you? Find the simple interest at the end of the 10th year. Now remember, if you're going to invest money, the only reason you're going to invest it is because you're getting something out of it. Otherwise, you might as well just take it and put it under your bed, right? So obviously, we're investing this money because we're getting this extra bit of interest on that money, which takes your 20,000 Rand and makes it 50,000 Rand. So now, to work out what interest we got in that 10-year period is very simple. We're going to take our final amount of 50,000 minus the initial amount of 20,000, and that tells us that we've got 30,000 Rand of interest in that 10-year period, which is quite a lot of interest to get. Okay, so for part B, we're going to take our final amount, which is 50,000, right? And then we subtract our initial amount, which we started with, which is 20,000, and that's going to give us 30,000. So obviously this 30,000, where did it come from? Well, that's the extra bit of interest that was added on. This is the simple interest that we received over the 10-year period. Okay, so we've got 30,000 Rand of interest over that entire investment period. Okay, now that's the whole 10-year period. And the next question they say to you, well, look, work out the simple interest that you're going to get each year. So yes, we're going to get 30,000 right at the end, but how much of interest, how does it accumulate every year? So we know that the total interest is 30,000. So this is now part C. And I want to work out the amount of interest I get each year. Alright. So all I do is I take the simple interest of 30,000 and I divide that by the number of years to see how much of interest I'm going to get per year. Okay, so 30,000 divided by 10 is going to give me 3,000 Rand. Okay, so you're getting 3,000 Rand per year. Okay, these are quite high amounts, guys, and really, in real life, in practice, you know, you're not going to find an investment like this. This seems really too good to be true, and if you find one like this, then hang on to it. Okay, so you're getting 3,000 Rand of interest just on a normal, simple interest investment per year for that 10-year period, which gives us that accumulated amount at the end of 50,000 Rand. Okay, so in this example, we just looked at a basic, straightforward application of the simple interest formula, and I showed you the different ways in which they can manipulate that formula and ask you questions. Okay, but basically the one thing you need to take out of this, and the one thing you need to remember about simple interest, is that your interest is calculated on the original amount. Okay, all right, with that, I think maybe it's time to cross to Looney and take a quick break.
Okay, cool. Mindsetters, we are going to take a very short break. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back straight after this. Welcome back, Mindsetters. I hope you guys are still in it with the finance with Natasha. Up here, I see you spotted a mistake there, so Natasha will check, but then yeah, just tell us like what the mistake is, because we've been checking during the break, but we'll go through it again just so that we please you and you're happy. So Natasha, straight back to you.
All right. Okay, Looney, I've had a look at the question. I don't actually see a mistake myself, so I think it might be a better idea for me to go through the question again so that you at home, if you think there might have been a mistake or if you're not following, you just sort of pick up from where we were before the break. Okay. All right, so this question we were given that we had an original amount of 20,000, we had N as 10 years, and we had an interest rate of 15% per annum. Now remember, I told you when we want to find the accumulated amount, which is what part A asks us to do, we need to use the formula A is equal to P times in brackets 1 plus I N. Now remember, P, and I think this is where he got lost, your I is 15%, right? You can't just put in 15 there. What you need to do is take your calculator and go 15, you need to get it in decimal form. So you go 15 divided by 100, and we get 0.15. And I think that's where he got confused, because he was asking, where is this 0.15 coming from? Well, the 0.15 comes from the interest rate. So we take the 15 divided by 100, that's where we get the 0.15 that you'll see in the bracket that I've put in. Okay, here's the 0.15. And then from your formula, you take the 0.15, you times it by N. Okay, so it's 0.15 times N, which is 10. Okay, and then we say plus 1. So this is just a straightforward application of the formula. It's 1 plus I times N. So 1 plus 0,15 times 10. You simplify all of that, literally put all of that into your calculator as you see it, and you'll get an answer of 50,000 Rand. So hopefully up here, if you thought there was a mistake, you can see now that there actually isn't any, and that you followed the steps we went through. What you need to remember, as I'll say it once again, is that when you're working out your formula, you need to have your interest rate in decimal form. So this I needed to be 0.15 and not 15. Okay. All right, Looney, have we had any more comments on that?
No, that was just the one from Apua.
Okay. All right, guys, so we're going to continue. So remember, we've been recapping, we've been looking at simple interest. We're using the formula for simple interest, all right? And now simple interest leads us into this next section, which in practice you will find out there in the real world, okay? And this is hire purchase agreements, okay? So a hire purchase agreement, what is it? How do we use it? You know, how does it work in real life? We're going to go through all of that in this next little section, okay? Now, generally, as I always say, it's not a very good idea to buy items on credit, okay? No one wants to be in debt, because being in debt means that you owe more money than you actually have. All right. So in general, we advise everyone not to take on credit. However, sometimes there are really big purchases, like you might need to buy, you know, a big fridge that costs quite a lot of money. You don't have the cash up front to buy that fridge. What do? That's when we use something like a hire purchase agreement, where you can pay a deposit down and then you pay the fridge off in monthly payments. Okay, so let's go to this theory behind hire purchase agreements. All right, so as I said, generally not a wise idea to buy items on credit, because obviously when you buy on credit, you have to borrow money, and obviously people aren't going to lend you money for free. You will then have to pay interest on whatever amount you owe. So you might end up borrowing money for 5,000 Rand, but then find, okay, well, I'm paying back maybe 10,000 Rand, okay, which is why credit is not always the best idea. Okay, as I said, sometimes there's big appliances you have to use credit for, and this is when we use a hire purchase agreement. So what is a hire purchase agreement? Okay, it actually is a financial agreement between a shop or a store or whoever it is and a customer. Okay, and it stipulates how the customer will pay for whatever item they want to buy. All right. The interest on a hire purchase loan is always charged at simple interest rates. Okay, and we only use hire purchase when we work out the simple interest. It's only on the amount that you actually owe. Okay, which means that if you paid a deposit, right, you'll then first subtract that deposit off whatever the amount was, and then you will calculate interest on what's left over. Okay, that will make more sense when we do an example. Okay, as I was saying, most agreements require that a deposit is paid before the product can be taken by the customer, and the principal amount of the loan, okay, is therefore the cash price minus the deposit. So that's what you would work out the simple interest on. Okay, we always minus the deposit first. Okay, so let's get into an example and let's see how we use hire purchase. And this is, you know, the kind of thing, obviously the interest rates and that I'm using here are not generally the things that you might find out there if you really have to go and buy a fridge on credit. Okay, so these are just used for illustrative purposes. You might not go and get an interest rate of 15% per annum, simple interest on a hire purchase agreement in an actual shop. So this is really just to show you how it works. All right, so let's have a look. We say that Jill takes out a 12-month hire purchase agreement, and she wants to buy a laptop priced at 14,000. So quite an expensive laptop, probably one of the latest, newest ones. She pays a deposit of 20%, and the interest charged on the balance is 15% per annum, simple interest. Okay, they ask you, what will the, and it's a two-part question, what will the monthly payments be, and what will she actually pay for the laptop? Okay, so firstly, because we know that we are dealing with a hire purchase agreement, we straight away know that the formula we're going to use is the simple interest formula. A is equal to P to 1 plus I times N. Okay, so we know that that's the formula we're using. Okay. They tell us a few things. They say that she takes out a 12-month hire purchase agreement. Now remember, this is N, but remember I told you in the beginning, always keep N in terms of years. So 12 months will become 1 year. Okay. She wants to buy a laptop priced at 14,000 Rand. So the original amount of the loan will be 14,000. She pays a deposit of 20,000 Rand. We'll deal with that just now. And the interest rate is 15% per annum simple interest. So I must take my interest rate divided by 100, and I'll get 15 divided by 100, 0.15. Okay, all right. Now what do we do with the fact that she's got a 20% deposit to pay? Okay, now remember they told us the original amount was 14,000 Rand. Okay, and we pay 20% of that amount as a deposit. So if I want to find out how much she pays as a deposit, all I do is I find 20% of 14,000 Rand, and that becomes my deposit. So I say 20% times 14,000 Rand, and that should give me the amount that she will pay as a deposit. 20%, so we convert it to a decimal, it would be 0.2 times 14,000, and that will give you 2,800, but let's just check. So it's going to be 0.2 times 14,000, and we get 2,800 Rand. So therefore, she pays a deposit. Oopsie. All right. Let's do this. Let's try that again. 2,800 Rand. Okay. So, if she's paid a deposit of 2,800 Rand, guys, how much is the actual amount of this loan going to be? How do we work it out? All you do is you simply take the total price, which is 14,000 Rand. You then subtract out the deposit, and then that's the amount that the simple interest will be based on for the remainder of the loan. Okay, so the amount that she owes is not 14,000 Rand. She owes 14,000 minus 2,800, which was the deposit. All right, so we say 14,000 minus 2,800, and we get 11,200. So therefore, 11,200 is going to be the value of her loan. Okay, so let's just go back up and let's have a look. Alright, I just need to close the ink layer first. There we go. So 11,200 Rand is the value of the loan that she's going to take out on the laptop. Okay, but we haven't answered the question yet. They said, what will the monthly payments be? Now, if you want to work out what the monthly payments are going to be, you need to know how much she is going to pay in total for this hire purchase agreement. Once we've got that final amount, okay, now remember, she's taken this loan out for 12 months, 1 year. So if I want to know what the monthly payments are, I'm simply going to take that amount that she owes at the end, divide it by 12 months, and that will give me the monthly payments. Okay, so let's do it. Right, so in the beginning there, all I was doing is just working out the value of the loan, which is 11,200. I now need to work out the monthly payment. So the first thing I do is work out the simple interest on, well, the final amount of this loan. So it's going to be 1 plus I, which was 0.15. Well, it was 15%, which is 0.15. And remember, we times by n, which is 1 year. Okay. So it's going to be 11,200 times 1 plus 0.15 is just going to be 1.15. But again, you don't have to show any of this. You can put that first line straight into your calculator. All right, so we've got 11,200, right? And we're going to times that by 1.15. And that's going to give me 12,880. Okay, so 12,880 is what the loan will amount to at the end of a year. Okay, so it's 12,880, but we want to know what she's going to pay each month. So we take the 12,880, divide it by 12, and let's see what we get there. So it's 12,880 divided by 12, and we get 1,073 rand and 33 cents. So that's 1,073 rand and 33 cents. Let's just call that up again to make sure. 1073.33. All right, great. So that's the amount of the monthly payments. She's paying 1,073 rand each month, and that's what the question has asked you to do. Okay, now in the next part, you'll have a look and you'll see that they say, what will she actually pay for the laptop? Now guys, you might be tempted to say, well, look, at the end of that whole 1 year period, she pays 12,880, therefore she actually pays 12,880. Wow, bargain, it was actually 14,000, but she's paying only 12,880. That's not correct. Okay, you've got to be careful because we've got to take into account the deposits that she's paid, because remember, that's money that she's physically paying as well. So the actual amount that she's going to pay is going to be this 12,880 plus the deposit amount that she paid, which was 2,800, and that will give you the total amount that she's going to pay on this laptop. Okay, so it's not going to be less than 14,000 rand, which will be a mega bonus. It's 12,880 plus the initial 2,800, and she pays 15,680. So 15,680 on a laptop that cost 14,000 rand. Okay, so from this example, what do you need to take out? You need to remember that when you're dealing with hire purchase agreements, we're looking at simple interest. Okay, when you're dealing with simple interest, you need to remember that for N, you use N as the number of years. Okay. Also with hire purchase agreements, always remember that you need to subtract a deposit. If the person pays a deposit, you need to first subtract that deposit amount out, and then you work out your simple interest on the balance. Okay, so very, very important to subtract that initial amount out, otherwise you're going to work with the wrong p-value in your equation. All right, okay, Luni, is there any questions?
Yes, we do have a question. Okay, that's the person. She's asking, what should you do when they say that money is compounded quarterly?
Okay, well, that's actually the next section we're dealing with is compound interest.
Okay.
So we're not going to look at compounded quarterly, and that we're going to take it at a slower pace. So in today's lesson, we're just going to look at the basics, and next week we'll do slightly more difficult questions. So that's not for today's lesson.
Okay. And then Karabo Rapolo is asking, when we talk about accumulate money, okay, we talk about increase money or decrease, so maybe accumulative money.
She's talking about the accumulated amount.
Yes.
Now remember guys, when you're finding an accumulated amount, when you're dealing with simple interest, and then later on when we do it just now, compound interest, your money is growing. So it's going to become bigger. It's going to be growth. Okay. When we talk about depreciation, which I don't think we do in grade 10, then you start talking about your money that decreases in amounts. And you know, there's a lot of different ways we use finance, and we use interest and compound interest and annuities and that kind of thing, which is not really for the grade 10 syllabus. All you need to remember that if you're accumulating something, so you're accumulating lots and lots of chocolates, it means that you've got lots of chocolates, you're growing that amount. Okay, and that's really all you guys need to remember about accumulated. It means that your money is growing. All right.
No more questions.
No more, that's it. So I think, Luni, is it time for us to take a quick break?
Yes, we can. Mindset says we are going to take a very short break. I'd just like to send a shout out to Apiwe Mtembu, who's been going through the questions and working on them and giving me all the answers as Natasha is asking. So congratulations to you. You are a star. So Mindset says with all of that, we are going to take a very short break. So don't you go anywhere. Welcome back, Mindsetters. I hope you guys got some water and some juice and your brains are flowing nicely with all this information that I'm giving you. Remember that I did post all the questions that Natasha was going through on our Facebook page. So if you can just look at that on facebook.com/learnextra, you'll see that I put down the definitions of hire purchase, compound interest, simple interest, everything that Natasha was going through, and then I put down the examples for you as well. So check that out on our Facebook page. Don't forget to hit me up on Twitter with all your questions at Learn Extra, and I also did post all the show notes, guys, so you have no excuse to go through all this information that I've given you. So with all that, I'll take it back to Natasha.
All right. Okay, guys, so in the first half of this lesson, we've looked at simple interest. We've looked at using simple interest in hire purchase agreements. Okay, it's a straightforward hire purchase agreement. It's really a straightforward application of simple interest. The only thing you've got to remember is that you sometimes need to subtract the deposit amount out. Okay, but it just depends on the question, because sometimes you can have a hire purchase agreement where no deposit is paid. So really just play it by ear and see what the question asks for. Okay, so we're going to go into the very big section that you guys will become very familiar with as you go on from grade 10 to grade 12. You really will be dealing with compound interest. So not so much with simple interest, but a lot with compound interest. Okay, now remember when we discussed simple interest, we said that in simple interest, your interest was based only on the original amount. Well, the difference with compound interest is that your interest is calculated on the original amount plus any interest that you've already earned. Okay, so that's the big thing. So for example, just say that you had 1,000 Rand that you initially invested, and it was, I'm just taking a random number, say at 10% per annum, and at the end of the year you're going to get, I don't know, 1,100 Rand. Okay, the next time you work out your interest with compound interest, you're not going to work it out on this 1,000 Rand. Your interest will then be worked out on the new amount at the end of the year. So that's the thing with compound interest. That's the reason that it's so good for growing money, especially with investments, because you're not working out interest just on the original 1,000 Rand you're putting in, but you're working out your interest and you're calculating it on all the accumulated interest that you have over the period of your investment. Okay. Now, if a question doesn't explicitly say whether you're using simple interest or compound interest, take it to be compound interest. If the teacher wants you to work something out via simple interest, they will always state that it's simple interest. Okay, so if the question says nothing and they just say interest is calculated at 10% per year, take it as compound interest. Okay, right. So we're going to get straight into an example of how to use simple interest. Compound interest. Just remember, when you are dealing with compound interest, you're talking about an exponential increase in money. So if I had to graph it, okay, if this depicts my compound interest, your money will grow like that. Okay, it will grow exponentially. Whereas if you were calculating interest on a simple interest method, your money will grow on a straight line basis. Okay, so that's the difference. As you can see, after the first year of the investment, really your money starts growing quite a lot faster than it will on a simple interest method. Okay, so just a quick little graph for you to depict and see what's happening. So when you're dealing with compound interest, we're looking at an exponential increase in money, which after the first year will become much higher than what you can get on a simple interest method. Okay, all right, so as I was saying, first example, right? They tell us that Tyrone invests 4,000 Rand for 5 years at 15% per annum, compounded annually. They say find the future value. That's another way to say accumulated amount. Okay, sometimes you see that being used. All right, find the future value of the investment after 5 years and the interest that he receives. Okay, so they're asking you two things here. Firstly, what is the accumulated amount? And then next, what is the interest that he receives? So let's mark down. We know that he invests 4,000 Rand. So A is 4,000. I'm just going to rewrite. Sorry, P is 4,000. In fact, let me just get rid of that. So that's our P amount. Our principal original amount is 4,000 Rand. He invested for 5 years, so therefore N is equal to 5. At an interest rate of 15%, so therefore I is 0.15. And remember, the way I got that is I took 15 and I divided it by 100. Okay. It's compounded annually. They want the amount of the investment after year 5. All right. So we're going to use our compound interest formula. A is equal to P times 1 plus I to the power of N. Okay, so your N now, your number of years, is an exponent. We simply plug in our initial amount, which is 4,000, times 1 plus I being your interest rate, which is 0.15, and we're going to grow all of that for 5 years. So N is 5. All right. Let's have a look at what we get there. So it's going to be 4,000 in brackets 1.15, and this is all going to be to the power of 5. And that gives us 8,045 Rand and 43 cents. So 8045, 8045 and 43 cents. Okay, so that is the value of the investment after 5 years of compound interest. Okay, so 5 years of compound interest working on that value of 4,000 Rand, and you get an amount of 8,045 Rand and 43 cents. Guys, what I want to do, because I know you would have done these kind of exercises at school as well, but I want to show you, just divert a bit from the question, I want to show you what would have happened if we worked this out using simple interest. So I'm going to do something that's slightly different, not really what the questions asked us to do, but I just want to show you if we had worked this out using simple interest. Okay, so this is an aside. And in case you were wondering, well, what's the big difference between simple interest and compound interest? Have a look at this. If we were working out simple interest, we were going to say 1 plus 0.15, 1 plus 0.15, and then we times N is 5. Okay, and let's see what we get. So it's going to be 4,000, and then in brackets, 1 plus 0.15 times 5, and that's going to give us 7,000 Rand. So as you can see, that's equal to 7,000 Rand. That's quite a big difference, hey, in the same period. From 7,000 to 8,045 Rand, you're making 1,045 Rand more using your compound interest method versus simple interest. So that's why in the real world out there, when you're getting your investments and that, your investments are done on compound interest. We don't really use simple interest for investing of money, because as you can see, you're going to get a much better rate on a compound interest formula versus a simple interest formula when we use the same interest rate. So 15% in both of these is going to be better using compound interest than simple interest. Okay, so I just wanted to show you that if you've got the same interest rate and you've got a choice, you rather choose to invest your money via compound interest. Okay, and what's important there is it's got to be the same interest rate. Okay, so I looked at 15% over the same time period. If, of course, you change the rates, then we're going to be talking about a completely different story. Okay, but basically, for our purposes for now, compound interest 15% is going to be much better than simple interest 15%. Okay, we get more money out. All right, so we get 8,045 Rand on our compound interest formula. which is the value of the investment after 5 years. Then ask you for the interest he receives. So the interest he receives is just that extra bit, that took his money from 4,000 to 8,045 rand. So if I want to work out the interest that he receives, I simply take 8,045 rand and 33 cents, and I minus the original amount which he invested, which was 4,000.
43 cents, hey?
All right, and 43 cents. There we go. Okay, so that will give me 8,045 minus 4,000 will give me 4,045 rand and 43 cents. Hey, Luni?
Yes.
Okay, so that's 4,045 rand and 43 cents over that 5-year period, and that, remember, is just your interest. That's how much of interest he has earned in that 5-year period. And it's important that you guys distinguish between the interest that they earn and then the final amount, because they are two completely different things. Okay, before I go into the next question, I just want to see if you guys are following and if they have any questions.
Okay. Jabulile Caroline is asking, will they ever be asked to draw a graph based on these questions?
No. I just showed you the graph just for illustrative purposes. I mean, I don't want to say no. I mean, some teachers might now decide, okay, I want them to plot this on a graph. It's not impossible, but I highly doubt that you'll be asked to draw a graph.
Okay, those are all the questions I have.
Okay. All right, guys, so we're going to move on to another compound interest question. Remember, we're using the formula for compound interest, and we're just expanding and applying that formula and seeing where we go with it. Okay. All right. So here we've got question 2 on compound interest, and it says, Joe takes out a loan, okay, so now no longer an investment, a loan, in order to start a small business. 3 years later, so there's just a year's missing there, 3 years later, she repays it by means of a once-off payment of 40,000 rand. Okay. The bank charges her an interest rate of 24% per annum, compounded annually. All right, you don't have to worry about this little section just yet, because for now, all of your questions will be compounded annually. How much did she borrow from the bank? So this one is a little bit different. They're telling you what the final amount of the loan is, and they want to know, well, how much did she originally borrow? So if we put it in terms of letters and what you guys are used to, they're giving you A, and they want to find out what P is. Okay, so what information do we have? Okay, we know that the period is 3 years, so we know that N is equal to 3, right? And she repays it with a once-off payment of 40,000 rand. So that once-off payment, that's not going to be your P, that's your A. That's the final amount that she pays to pay off this loan. Okay, so she deposits or pays off 40,000 rand at the end of 3 years. The bank charges her an interest rate of 24% per annum, so therefore I is going to be 24 divided by 100. Okay, and that will give me 0.24. Okay, so that's the interest rate that the bank has agreed to, and they want to know how much. So in other words, what is P? How much did she borrow from the bank? Okay, so let's have a look. We're still going to use the compound interest formula, right? Because besides the fact that they say it's compounded annually, remember what I said to you in the beginning, if they don't stipulate, we always take it as compound interest. Okay, so we're going to use A is equal to P into 1 plus I to the power of N. We know that A, the final amount now, is 40,000 rand. So don't get confused there. They actually tell you what the end amount is, so don't confuse that with P. And what are we looking for? We're looking for P. We want to know how much she borrowed. This is equal to P times 1 plus I is 0.24. All right, and that's to the power of N, and N is 3. Okay, so we need to get to the P. Now remember how you change the subject of the formula? Hopefully you guys have all done that by now. So I want to get to the P, so I need to divide both sides by that bracket. So I'm going to get P is equal to 40,000 divided by 1.24 to the power of 3. Now before you all start saying, oh, where did the 1.24 come from? All I've done is I've added those two together in the brackets. So 1 plus 0.24 gives me 1.24. If you don't like it like that, put it into your calculator as you see it. Okay. Alright, now we simply need to divide this. So it's 40,000 divided by 1.24 to the power of 3. And that's going to give us 20,979 rand and 49 cents. Alright, so that's 20,979 rand. Okay, I can't remember that. Let's just go back and check if that was in fact what it was. 20,979, yes, correct. And 49 cents. Okay. So that's the original amount that she borrowed. And if you have a look, over 3 years, that's quite a lot of interest that she paid. And this is why we said in the beginning, when we were looking at hire purchase agreements, which is another form of a loan, it's not always such a good idea to take items on credit, because if you look at, she took out, or whatever she wanted was valued at 20,979 rand, and in a 3-year period she's paid 40,000 rand, so that's almost double the original amount. Okay, so this is what I'm saying, if you can avoid credit, please do. Okay, so guys, what this example shows you though is that you can manipulate that formula. We can ask you to find A, which is just a straightforward application of your compound interest formula or simple interest formula. You can manipulate, you can be asked to manipulate the formula, so you're looking for the original amount, which is what we did in this case. Or we can even ask you to find N in some cases, but we'll get to the ones, especially where you're going to be looking at finding N with your simple interest, and that we'll do those kind of things in next week's lesson. Luni, do we have any questions?
We've got this one question from Apiwe Morgan Makatini. It's like a question, a whole different question on its own. So he says, guys, please help with this. And then he writes down the actual question. It goes, Rowan invests...
Okay, let me write this down.
What is this digit?
Okay. All right.
It's so a 1 with 1, 2, 3... 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it's a 1 with 5 zeros, comma 0,
okay,
0.
So 100,000.
100,000, yes.
Looks like this, Luni.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.00, yes.
Okay.
For 5 years, at 12% per annum, compounded monthly, for the first 2 years.
Okay, you can stop right there. Okay, this is beyond the scope of today's lesson and beyond what our mindsetters need to know right now. But generally, I mean, you will be expected eventually to know this kind of thing, but just not right this second. Okay, we are going to look at cases where you compound monthly and the interest rate changes and that kind of thing, but it's really not for this course and for this lesson.
Okay, cool.
Okay. All right. Is there anything else, Luni?
That's the only problem we had. It was just that one big question, but all the other people were fine.
Okay, and everyone's understanding?
Yes.
All right, great. Okay, guys, so I'm just simply going to go through, because I thought we were going to do this nice question with you guys. In fact, let's do it, but let's do it as a just a normal compound interest question, okay? And let's just get an idea of what this question involves. Okay, so I'm not going to do it as compounded monthly because, as I said, that's something we'll deal with in a later lesson. Okay, so we've got P is equal to 100,000, N is 5, I is 0.12. And if we want the accumulated amount, we're going to say A is equal to P, which is 100,000, times 1 plus I, so it's 1 plus 0.12. And all we're going to do is work out the final amount by raising that to the power of 5. Okay, this is going to be 1.12 to the power of 5, and we times that by 100,000. Okay, we simply do that on our calculator. So it's 100,000 times 1.12 to the power of 5. Okay, and that gives us 176,234 rand. So that's 176,234 rand over the 5-year period. Okay, all right, so that would have just been, if they hadn't said, compounded monthly, and then that would be a straightforward application. Take your principal amount, grow it, principal or original. I've been using that interchangeably. They mean the same thing. So take the original amount, grow it at 12% for 5 years, and you end up with 176,000 rand. Now, guys, whenever we say grow something, what we mean is that interest has acted on some amount, and it grows, hence the term growth. So it grows to some final larger amount. Okay. All right, so thank you so much for joining us today. Remember, this lesson on finance will continue next week, and we'll look at harder, more complicated examples. Hope that you've all enjoyed the show and that you understand this section a little bit better. Cheers.
All right. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Don't forget to catch Connections tonight at 7:15 here on this channel. They have Celebrity Day today, so they'll have a special guest. Make sure you tune in and check out who that special guest will be. From us, until next time, thank you so much, Natasha, for giving us this lesson. Thank you, Mindsetters at home, for tuning in. We'll see you next time. Bye.